Hi, I'm Petara Tanuvasa. I'm an insurance broker. I want to see fairness in the business world, especially in the world of insurance. And this is my story.
Welcome to Fair Go, your favourite podcast about building a better tomorrow. A podcast by the people, for the people, where we share small business stories from the business owners themselves. When you encounter unfair obstacles that are too hard to overcome on your own, remember, you don't have to do it alone. Together we can rebuild our great Southland and make Australia proud again. Join us today at fairbusinessaustralia.com.au.
Welcome to Fair Go, a podcast by the people, for the people. For small business owners, insurance is something that definitely needs looking at as part of our everyday business runnings. And so I have with me today a very special guest, a very awake, a very fair, can you have fair and insurance broker in the same sentence? Apparently you can. Petara, welcome for coming on the call today. Lovely to have you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Fair Business Australia, for having me.
Now, am I saying your name correctly? I want to make sure that I am. Is that actually how it's pronounced?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome.
Petara.
Awesome. And where do you hail from? What's your heritage?
So I'm a Kiwi, born in New Zealand, Samoan by descent, and an Australian by choice. Yes.
Awesome. Love that. And you are an insurance broker. How long have you been in insurance for?
Yes, that's correct. So I've been in the insurance industry for close to 10 years, but recently I stepped out to construction and worked for an Australian renowned builder for a couple of years. And so that gave me insight into construction, which is my field of choice to specialize in. So I've just started my insurance agency over the last 14 months. It's been trading, helping builders right across Australia.
Yeah, right. And we were talking just before we hit record. We were talking about your good wife. What's the story there? Do tell.
Yes. So my wife had been a nurse for over 20 years, but over the period of time the pandemic had rolled out, she was brought to a position where she had to make the decision to continue with her job, with the option of getting the injection to be accepted into that role, or to not get the injection and therefore discontinue her employment. So she chose her health over her job, and she wasn't able to continue being a nurse, even though it's been a lifetime career that she's loved all her life for the past 20 years, but she wasn't able to continue being a nurse because she was not vaccinated or COVID-vaxxed. Yes.
And can you speak at all to the differences that your wife was seeing boots on the ground compared to what the media was actually reporting on? Was there a stark difference, or was it pretty much what they were saying?
So yes, that was very interesting, Rebecca, because when all of this pandemic had started, we were, of course, very curious. And my wife had worked right through that whole pandemic since the commencement of it. And it was very interesting, the stories she was telling me as she arrived home and what we were seeing in the mainstream media. There was a massive contrast. She was saying the AMBOs, they was just standing by. They weren't rushing off in emergencies. The hospitals, they weren't as overwhelmed as what the mainstream media was telling at that time. So we were very curious as to why all of this. The media was saying one thing, she was seeing a different thing down at her workplace. So very earlier in the piece, we looked at it with interest and discovered that there was a massive discrepancies in this narrative and what was actually happening on the ground. So through the whole pandemic, she was there. She worked through the whole COVID phase, helping people. She didn't see many patients being infected with COVID. And it was very unconvincing what we were hearing, the information that was coming out in the media, and what she was actually seeing when she was in contact with these cluster groups like the aged care, the people in the hospitals, and all of that. So very early days of the pandemic, we didn't see a massive influx of patients going into hospitals and dying from COVID. And so it just didn't match up. And so, yes, we started looking into it. And then, of course, once the vaccinations started coming out, we looked at it in hesitancy, but we were still open to the vaccination, the idea of being vaccinated against the virus. We feel that that was very important, so we took it very seriously. But the more research we uncovered and the more materials that we came across, it just didn't add up. It didn't convince us that this particular injection, in fact, there were 3 of them, may not have been the answer to the virus as we now sort of see happening across the nation and, of course, across the world.
Okay, so right now you're the sole breadwinner, aren't you? Because wife is not working.
At the moment, yes. At the moment,
yeah, and that's quite typical across Australia that people are walking away from jobs. I mean, in Queensland this year, apparently 36,000 out of our 100,000 teachers will not be returning because they don't want to get the jab, and that's a huge portion of the population. Which brings us to small business owners and having to get the jab and ensuring that their insurance is in play, which insurance can be very difficult and convoluted for a lot of people. So how do you actually help small business owners, given that you've been an employee for quite some time and long enough to see what it's like to be an employee? So you're able to stand across both sides of the fence. How do you help small business owners to navigate forced vaccinations and QR codes and mandate upon mandate upon mandate? What does it look like when businesses come to you for insurance advice?
Sure. So with the risk management, business owners need to carry out in their course of work to comply with all these mandates. There are a lot of questions that become of it. With my clients, I've been journeying alongside with them. They have questions on what type of insurance that they could take out to better protect them from loss or just in general what's happening, whether they should be enforcing these mandates or not. So I'm able to journey alongside them and experience their pain pretty much, and to figure it out on how it actually looks in their workplace, and then be able to discuss insurance solutions that will better protect them in those scenarios. For example, in construction, one of the covers that is relevant at the moment is called management liability. And that protects the business owners or general contractors from any civil liabilities or statutory breaches. Now, of course, with the rollout of the vaccination mandates, that is somewhat reflected in the OH&S legislations and workplace. So it's very, very interesting how, on one hand, you've got premiers are saying that this is law, but then on the other hand, you have Prime Minister saying that it's not a mandatory or a law, or you have government authorities that say that's all voluntary based. So it's being there and journeying alongside the business owners and try and figure out ways that they could comply with the best possible effort that they can at that time, be able to manage the workforce, and then creating an insurance program that would better fit their needs, and then be able to explain the benefits of those covers so they can take advantage of it in terms of the loss. Now, we had discussed earlier how interesting it is at the moment with worker-to-worker type claims and how that would look like if a business owner would enforce a mandate or a rule that for people to be coming back to their work, or their employees, that they have to be vaccinated. So what happens if that employee suffers an injury? They take the injection, they suffer a heart attack or some sort of adverse event. What would it look like in terms of an insurance claim? Would a workers' compensation respond in that scenario? And how that workers' compensation claim would then, what would it mean for the business owner? Would it come back to bite them at a later stage? Because that's generally how it works, Rebecca, with workers' compensation claims. Later down the track, after they pay out claims, they normally come back to the business owner's liability insurance, being that it's a third, they treat these employee like subcontractors, third-party claims. And so the insurance market is always paying out millions, millions of dollars worth of claims, because the business owners aren't able to defend these claims, not having the right risk management procedures in place.
Right.
So it's a very, very interesting conversation at the moment in this space, because it's extremely new. There's no precedents behind. There's no history of any of this been happening. So everyone is trying to figure it out as we go. And so I see my place as someone that can be there at a time of need, to be the strength of a business owner that can ring up. We can discuss what's troubling them, what's keeping them up at night, and also to walk them through of what we can, of the insurance solutions available that can sort of help them in different scenarios. Yes.
So just to recap what you're saying is that if there is a workplace injury, and there doesn't seem to be, or a causation of an injury, and there doesn't seem to be any ramifications of that, but 12, 18 months, 2 years later, it's tracked back to, well, I hurt my knee on a construction site back in 2019, then the people from 2019 will be liable. So there is the possibility, particularly if government does a backflip on legislation, that insurance companies and small business owners could be found liable for anything that is a causational impact now that doesn't present itself for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years, because this is an unprecedented time and we don't know the long-reaching effects of what is a TGA provisionally approved procedure.
You're 100% right, Rebecca. I suppose there's a lot of risk that's happening because of the lack of information and data at the moment. So it's important for business owners to have everything documented, have their incident reports, have some sort of record of incidents as they occur, and also records of conversations and what led them to those decisions to perhaps require their employees to undertake this experimental drug injection for the sake of keeping their job. So I fervently disagree with that sort of notion. I believe that people should have a right to make a choice, to be informed of what that decision would mean for their health, and to be given that opportunity to say yes or no. And they shouldn't be put in a position where they're coerced or taking something under duress, because I fundamentally believe in our liberties and our freedoms. I know that a lot of people in our past have given up their lives, have shed blood over just protection of our freedom. And I don't take that lightly. I feel like there's value in that, in what was done in the past, and we should honor that by living out these freedoms. By standing up, voicing your concerns. Don't keep quiet if there's something that doesn't quite sit right with you. If you're an employee, make a stand up and say something to your employers. Ask the questions, and it doesn't have to be a very strong confrontation. You can just sit down and talk it over peacefully and say, look, I don't understand what's going on. Can we go through this together? And then likewise with employers, they can stand up for whoever is on the next line. You can voice your concerns to your local MPs. So I'm doing my part as well. I want to band together with as many businesses in this space and sort of come together with one voice. And let's look at figuring all of this out. Let's stand for justice. And let's fight for peace. Yeah.
Yes. And employees certainly can get that information that they require from our mandate info pack. But one of the reasons why I'm really excited to be talking to you today is that we have had Chinese whispers going around socials recently that the reason why business owners are taking the steps that they're taking to coerce staff to insist that people trying to shop at their business do have a green tick on their phone is down to insurance. That if I don't do this, then the insurance companies will not give me an insurance policy, or it's required as part of my policy. Can you speak to that at all? Are insurance companies putting pressure on small business owners, either by current or new policies right now, to make people get vaccinated?
From as far as I know, Rebecca, what I'm aware of, there's no insurance company at the moment that is doing that. Insurance always look to protect and act out of goodwill and good faith. Yes, they do have to observe and follow the legislations that are in place. But at the moment, as a requirement for people to be vaccinated, I'm unaware that there is such a requirement. And of course, there are a lot of different types of insurance products. So I'd be very, very interested to know the details of what these business owners are referring to. Maybe they're looking at workers' compensation type insurance products. But as I alluded to before, you can go to the websites of like WorkSafe, Victoria, or these authority schemes and insurances that you can look at the details and the fine print that's well published in those websites, so you can better educate yourself. Me personally, I have not seen an insurer with that type of requirement. So
sure. Now, there is no one size fits all for insurance, for obvious reasons, that we all have different needs and risk management needs. Are there specific questions that a small business owner should or could be asking their broker so that they can make sure that they're getting the best deal, the most niche and tailor-made fit for their small business? Do you have any advice as to how to get yourself the best policy for your small business needs?
Yeah, so it's finding a good broker that would take the time to listen out and find out what the actual needs of your business and be able to walk with you and not just give you quotes of policies and so forth, go through the box ticking exercise, but to genuinely take the time to understand your industry and what your needs are, and then be able to go through with you in detail what each product and the features of different products that are in the market space, and the pros and the cons, and not just looking at the actual price, because at the moment the price of insurance is just going through the roof. So the value of the broker is even more important from an education perspective, that they take the time out to really go through the product, make sure you have any questions or any things that you're uncertain of, to be fully confident of your insurance program. It's not just about looking at just one particular policy, it's your full insurance program and then understanding what the risk exposures are. Now, when it comes to COVID, the way that I look at it is COVID is just another risk. It's just another virus. And so in the workplace, there are so many other different risks that are there that you got to pay attention to. There's trips and falls. There's all these different types of hazards that you need to have a plan to sort of manage. And so don't just put one big, huge focus on just this one particular area and forget about everything else. You know, it's the full insurance program. You got to look at your procedures, your processes, your documentations, and also how you record that documentations, and eventually how you would retire that information as well, because you still have that responsibility. And you know, one of the interesting things that the debates and the conversations that's having at the moment is it's just the COVID information. Like what does it mean to a business owner to keep that information? Because there is legislations to keep your health identification information
Yeah.
the same way as your tax file information. There are specific legislations to protect that. So how does that play into a business owner in managing that and then storing that and giving the person access to that? All of this is just very, very interesting at the moment.
And you said that the price of insurance is going through the roof right now. Why is that? Is that because of COVID, or are there other factors that are contributing to that?
Depending on different products, because one business could have in their insurance program usually maybe 4 or 5, possibly 6 or 7 different products. For example, you have a builder, you have the contract works and public liabilities, you have your management liability for statutory breaches, you have your cyber crime, because right now, with everything that's going on online, there's a risk exposure of cyber theft and cyber crime, malicious damage. And then you have professional indemnity for any errors and omissions in your advice or designs. So with all of these different products are made available, depending on your claims history, the type of occupation, and your trading history as well. All of these factors go into the underwriting of a particular policy. So it's a very difficult question to ask you in terms when it comes to price, because each different insurers, because that's the role of the broker, is to take the client's information and their needs and then go to the market. And there are several different channels that we go to. We bring in together the results and present that to the client, say, these are the benefits and features, the pros and cons. What would you like to choose? Be fully aware of your choice before you make that decision. So,
yeah, awesome.
So in terms of price, look, for Fair Business Australia, I'm more than willing to just, give a free consultation, sit down and go through a proper review of business owners.
Sure.
Minimal cost in terms of broker fees, depending on your turnovers. I'd be looking at waiving this broker fee altogether to assist businesses at the moment as they're trying to get back on their feet.
Wow.
And then, of course, to try and get the best available product specific to them as well. So.
Wow. Well, that's generous, because we actually hadn't spoken about that before that. So I really appreciate you being willing to give free consultations, and where people are really doing it tough over the last couple of years to possibly waive some brokerage fees. So that's really kind of you. And you've also said that for every new policy that comes through, you're actually going to donate a percentage of that back to Fair Business Australia, which we're going to use for printing. We're going to use it for our business card initiative, so that we can get more businesses aware that they don't have to vax their staff, they don't have to turn away unvaccinated people, so that we can become a fairer country all round. So I think that's a really great partnership for people who have a lot of questions and are not really sure which way to turn and are really doing it tough. Maybe they're not happy with their current policy. Maybe they just want to find out whether there's a better policy out there for them, that they can come through to. It's silverback insurance, isn't it?
That's correct. That's correct.
Silverback.
And so,
what's the story behind Silverback? Tell us.
well, as I was explaining to you before, a really funny story that I was weighing up between a unicorn insurance, the name of unicorn insurance, or silverback insurance at the time. And unicorn being, of course, businesses that start in the first 12 months go on to making $1 billion turnover. But to be very honest, I was looking at taking a piss out of the corporate world, really, just to have a bit of fun with the names. And so Silverback came about. I pitched it to the networks and pitched it around strength, protection, and service, and it resonated with them because it was so refreshing. But I also wanted to challenge the stigma in racism, or just the prejudice around terms such as, when they think of silverback, they think of gorillas and all of that. So I wanted to challenge people's mindset. And I said, my idea was that you could have that as a stigma, or you could look at the content of what the person can really do for you and your business.
Yeah.
And so out of that, silverback came about, and I've just gone with it. I thought, yep, this is good. Let's see how we go, add some more value to businesses and people's lives.
So good. Well, we'll have your contact details for anybody watching the video, but for those listening on podcast, how can they actually reach out and get in touch with you for that free consultation to consider a new policy through Silverback Insurance?
Sure. So I'm one phone call away, 0410152835. You can reach me on email, petara@silverbackinsurance.com.au, or you can just go through my website, www.silverbackinsurance.com.au, or just reach out to Rebecca. And
oh no, don't do that. I might get inundated. It might be so popular that we get thousands of emails through. I don't want to have to deal with that. Just go through to Petara, please.
True, fair enough. Come straight to me. I'm here to help, and let's journey together. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And tell me, what do you see once we've finished with these COVID shenanigans? What kind of a future do you see for Australia? What are you actually fighting for? What's your wife standing for? What does Australia look like on the other side of all of this?
Sure. So I see the same vision as I know that the forefathers have seen. It's a place that we can live free, the place that we can live with prosperity, the place that they call it God's country, because of opportunity. That's what I see for my children who are born, who are Australians, and I want to protect that for them. Really, that is my why, is my children. I've got 2 children, a daughter and a son, and one wife, and I'm fighting for their future. And I want to see prosperity become of all of this. Once we get to the end of what we're fighting for, I want to see that happen. I want a place of peace where people can earn a living and go on to enjoy the fruits of their labor.
So good.
That's what I see. Yeah.
Love it. Oh, Petara, thank you so much for coming on board. Look forward to answering or asking you any other insurance related questions as they come about from our audience. So thank you so much again for your time. And folks, if you would like to reach out to Petara, you can do that at his credentials, and silverbackinsurance.com.au. Is that correct?
That's right. That's correct.
Great.
Thanks for having me, Rebecca. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have you got an inspiring story to tell? Register your business now for your chance to be featured on our Fair Go podcast. Ready to lend a helping hand? That's great. You can chip in through the website. Remember, 100% profit goes directly back into local small business. Together, we can rebuild this great Southland for ourselves and the next generation. Go to fairbusinessaustralia.com.au.